In this last section on effective communication, what I wanted to touch on briefly is our modern day tendency to err on the side of putting everything in writing. And sometimes that is a terrible decision. Think about how you can best communicate with your client. How are you going to get the best feedback from them? How are you going to be able to gauge their reaction to something? It's not going to be in an email. And so there are going to be occasions throughout your career when by far the better choice is going to be to pick up the phone or to arrange a meeting if you can, or to go out and see your client. I know that's just a foreign concept to some people, but you could leave your office and go to see your client where they're at. Just throwing that out there. Often this has a number of advantages beyond simply emailing them or texting them or sending them a letter. What are those advantages? The first is if you have bad news to deliver. You can gauge much more readily what their reaction is if they're right in front of you. You can see their facial expressions. You can hear their vocalizations. You can see what tone they have when they speak back to you. Are they incredibly upset? If so, at who? Are they angry? Are they okay with it? Are they needing more time to process it? What's it going to be? How are they going to respond to it? If you send an email, you have no gauge to know what's going to happen next. Whereas at least you can forewarn yourself a little bit if all hell's about to break loose as a result of a bad thing that's happened. The second benefit is that it is generally going to be better for developing rapport. Your client, much like you can hear them and their voice, they can get to know you better. In the sterile confines of a written communication, you often can't communicate much personality or have the impact of building much trust. This is because lawyers write so terribly, but that's a different issue. But if you're struggling with rapport development, maybe it's just because you're sending too many emails to your client. Pick up the phone and have a conversation. Break down some barriers. Ask how they're going. Find out what's doing in their life. Find out what their stress points are. I'm not saying you need to become their best friend. I'm not saying you need to spend an hour and a half talking shop. What you need to do, though, is appreciate that sometimes a verbal piece of communication is going to be a lot more open and frank than a written piece of communication. The last thing I wanted to endorse for verbal communication over written communication is that you can cover a lot more territory. They can ask questions more easily. You can either answer them or say, I'll come back to you on that. You can cover a lot of field very quickly in a telephone conversation or a face-to-face meeting. And it is often a big way to save time. Because if you're emailing back and forth or corresponding back and forth, it's very difficult for you to ask a question, wait for an answer, ask a question, wait for an answer, and vice versa. And it can chew up a lot of time, but it can also withdraw your focus from the matter. Let's say you send them an email. You've drilled into their file, and I spoke about focus before. You've worked on their file, right? It's in your hands. You've worked on it, and you've gotten to the point where you need to ask them something. So you send an email, and then there's nothing you can do until they come back to you, which means you put that file down, at which point you are immediately minimizing your productivity on that file. Whereas if you pick up the phone and can keep the momentum, it will allow you to get more done in relation to that file if they pick up the phone and if they answer you. But certainly you don't need to wait 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 6 hours for a response by email, at which point you need to remember what you were doing, why you asked, find the file again, open to the page you were at, open the document you had open before, or whatever it may be. It is simply more efficient sometimes to have a conversation and continue working on the file, rather than losing focus and losing productivity. So think about how you communicate with your client. Is it really best to send something in writing? If you're worried about the risk side of things, send an email confirming. Hey John, thanks for talking with me earlier, just confirming your instructions were blah, 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 blah. I'll get back to you soon on the topics we discussed, which were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Easy. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone, and that is your homework. Next time you have an opportunity to send an email to someone or some form of written communication, think to yourself, should this be a phone call? And if it should be, make the phone call.